Okay, it's hard to do this in a video. It's so much easier when we're in class. But this is the next step. So after um, we filled in this form um, about our research and just sort of jotted down what we found, um, these are still the instructions. Blah, blah, blah. We want 6 things like this. Now I want you to think about, but we really are focusing on the process, not on the product. We have a little bit of luxury right now of time. And so we want to keep this kind of raw and rough. And the reason is because this is an interesting quote I found about Robert Downey Jr. I'm still using him as an example, that even though I found it on this source, which isn't a very good source, and I can find a better source later on, finding his quote, which also apparently is in this book, that's the important thing. So that's why I copied and pasted this in here into my document. I quickly highlighted what I think is the thing to keep. I mean, here's his dad from the age of 6, giving him weed. 8 years old, they're doing cocaine, and 10 years old, they're doing heroin. For him in 1988 to describe that as a way for his dad to try to express love for me the only way he knew how. I didn't do any typing here. I just found it, right? So I'm gonna blend this quote at some point. But why do it early when I don't know exactly where I'm gonna put this in my paper? Or even in a paragraph for that matter. So I know I can do this. You guys have done the assignment. You can do it, okay? And we're only gonna get better practicing it, but we don't have to be perfect right now. We just have to be okay to good, somewhere in there. This is the important stuff that under here I wrote down some thoughts for future me. Future me is dying to get fed. So let's feed him. Let's take care of your future person, yourself. So I said a son following in the footsteps of his father because his father was an actor and he's going to take on acting. But then mixing that with drugs and successful acting in Hollywood means fame. So why does something that has to be hidden be mixed up with being famous? And that puts the kid in a pretty tough situation. So I didn't do a ton of reading. All I did was a ton of thinking. Remember in the beginning of the semester I asked you, have you ever written anything that made you think? Well, this is the thing that was missing, is the thoughts. Anybody could find this. It didn't take me anything to find this. So the way to stand out is, what do you think about it? So I'm provoking myself with some early thoughts, and then I wrote a couple questions, and then I arrived at that word shame. And that's where I put this up here, shame versus pride. Probably could tweak it to famous, you know, with that mixture of something to shame as well. I don't know. Shame's not the best word, but you know what I'm saying? I got to that point. And now I can walk away from it and I can start digging around for other things. Now, maybe I mentioned this in class, and if you're an online student only, I'm sorry. This is the best I can do to try to replicate what we do in class. The reason I thought about this, about Robert Downey Jr., is because there was a story about him storming out of an interview. And he stormed out of the interview because he was there to promote a movie, and he could tell the interviewer was working his way to questions about exactly this, like rehashing a story or bringing up embarrassing things about his father, who he has a good relationship with. He loves him. And that Robert Downey Jr. stormed out. He was furious. And what's caught on the tape of the interview is contentious, but not exactly explosive. And what happened off camera was explosive. So stepping back into the paper, it would make sense for me to do in a paragraph this, blend this sentence, write these thoughts, and then underneath talk about, later on when he was asked about, this, he got really angry. You know what I mean? And so if I had a whole bunch of these cards already filled in, if this one was about the interview, it would make sense to put this, and then this one, Robert Downey Jr. stormed out of an interview, and my commentary would be, well, he's protecting his father, blah, blah, blah. So here's the best part of the writing process. If I had this filled out with the interview thing, what if I said the interview thing first? Again, I'm not doing any writing right now. If you're in the position with 5 or 6 of these things filled out, the best thing right now is to mentally manipulate all those things and see when you pair them or and arrange them in a certain order, what exactly would you be saying? So my first thought again was say this. Here's this in this chronological. When he's a kid, he's doing drugs with his dad, and later on in an interview, somebody asked him some questions, and he flipped out, and sort of justifiably so. Well, what if I told the interview part first? You know, that'd be like a good first paragraph. That would be good explanation. So if I said, you know, Hollywood star storms out of interview, you know what I mean? That's sort of the, you know, very flat, two-dimensional, sensationalistic clickbait kind of headline. And then questions approached, you know, private life of some, and then after I said that, then I say that, you know, like this is why. He's protecting his father. You know what I mean? That has more impact. So this is, you know, have the teachers ever talked to you about outlining and writing an outline? Outlines are good, and this is an outline. We are just, as we discovering things, preserving our thoughts, and think of this as wet cement. This cement hasn't hardened yet. I don't know where in the paper I'm going to put this, so I don't want to blend the quote right now. I know I can do it. I'll do it later. And I know I think good thoughts. If I can elevate my thought, do that metacognition, think up the way to an idea or a concept, well, this is a shameful thing. So now I haven't typed anything. All I've done is said, you know what? This would be a powerful first thing about the interview. That would be really powerful. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the 5 or 6. Hopefully that's what you have. You know, get to 5 or 6. I'll help you. If you're just stuck, just let me know. I love finding stuff. Because finding stuff's easy. It's what you say about it is the important thing. So here I was going 1 and then 2. And then I thought about it and said, you know what? 2 and then 1 would be pretty powerful. Here's the challenge. Okay, what if I see something that's really paper thin? You know, like really, man, I think I see a sliver of truth here. Because that one, you know, even that one's sort of kind of direct. So here's the example I'm giving you. Like, you know, I could have filled out the interview one, but here's the example I'm giving you. I know Robert Downey Jr.'s career from the 80s and early 90s when he was sort of going through all this trauma and kind of playing it out on screen. So I remember his role in a movie called Less Than Zero, which was a book. So I went to Goodreads.com, and I'm gonna give you all these sources. Brandy Quote quotation page, Goodreads. Goodreads is especially good for literature or anything written, and you can search again by person or by subject matter or whatever. And I started looking for quotes about a book written by that guy that later on Robert Downey Jr. would play the lead role. This book is about wealthy Hollywood kids in the 80s, not really kids. They were high school friends, then they go off to college and they come back. And the one guy who didn't go off to college, who was sort of the head party guy, stayed home, and they're all realizing just how far his life is sunk into a mess. So it's that very 80s plastic, sudden wealth, you know, that very, very thin existence kind of a feel to it. It's a pretty dark book. So anyway, I thought about this. This road doesn't go anywhere. I thought about taking this quote, you know, about addiction. I mean, that says something about addiction right there. I mean, it says it in a book, but I could make that. But I kept looking for something more kind of esoteric or, you know, almost poetic, because the book is written that way. And then I found this. Now, I remember this vaguely from the book and the movie. It's been 30 years. And it's him and a friend driving around Hollywood Hills and then down on Sunset Boulevard, and they were shooting up heroin. So the book gets into this kind of hazy, poetic, not sure what's going on. You read the Great Gatsby. It's the same thing. Chapter 3, Great Gatsby. The narrator's drunk, and you can't tell exactly what's going on. It's just sort of mumbled phrases and internal thought. Same thing here. So just be here, the syringe fills with blood. So that's obviously, you know, shooting up. You're a beautiful boy. That's all that matters. I wonder if he's for sale. This is from as they're driving on Sunset Boulevard, which is one strange road. in Hollywood. It's a famous one. There's lots of clubs, and people go to those clubs. But especially in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of drug addiction there, and so kind of folks at their worst, just sort of strolling around, sometimes prostituting themselves. And at this point, the guy sees a guy just like him who's walking the street selling himself because his addiction is at that point. So I just copied and pasted this, and I threw it back into this document thinking, I'm talking about a relationship between a father and a son that's pretty complex and obviously has some problems to it. So I'm going to make a very thin, I mean, it may seem like a tightrope connection between this quote from a book that later on he'd play and this moment with his dad. Now, it's more risky than the interview connection. It is. But this is kind of the practice we want to do. So I'm going through all the revision history over here, so it's going to be a little clunky. But I bolded those two lines. You're a beautiful boy, that's all that matters. I wonder if he's for sale. And then I started, okay, I think I'm going to pair these together. Now, if I'd already written this stuff, like you guys have, you already have some, source reference and your wide open kind of questions, your commentary. This is where we shape them. So I'm sort of skipping ahead to that part. In his most powerful role as a young actor, wait, I could skip ahead, sorry. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's good. Here we go. Most powerful in lesson 0, always a title of books and films are italicized, not put in quotes. Names of TV shows also are italicized. Episode names are put in quotes. We'll do that another time. His most powerful role as young actor, Downey Jr. played Bret Easton. That's wrong. I got that wrong. That's the author's name. Young, wealthy heroin addict in a painful scene, Bret. And again, I'm not hung up on being perfect right now. I'm not. So anything that you have to show when you submit this stuff, don't worry about being perfect. We can get great later. So he and his friend, his name is Blair, not Brett. He and his friend are shooting up as they drive on Sunset, where the other addicts gather in the state of delirium. They describe the sight of another addict on the street as a, see what I did? Got rid of that, made it flow. Beautiful boy, that's all that matters, wonders he's for sale. Now, what can I say about that? And I have a feeling if I skip up one, I get to a better version, I think. So I do want to move ahead. So here we go. I firmed this up a little bit. We end with quotes, parentheses, period. I'm reminding myself I got to find what page number that's in. So these, again, this is just a working document, but I just want to show you how fast you can get to a paragraph. Beautiful boy, that's all that matters, wanting for sale. This is the important part. I know this is coming second. I know I'm going to make this the second part of that first thing about his dad. My commentary then jumps to pretty good because I really want to make my argument. The language of the book and the dialogue of the film, remember when they made this film, he got to play the role of the guy falling apart.